Hello there, and thank you for joining us on the Monday edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Today on the program, INEC declares Anambra governorship election inconclusive, orders supplementary poll in Ihiala local government area, which will hold on Tuesday. Also, chartered architects are demanding a triple-level probe of the Ikoyi collapsed building. And later on the show, bandits kill 2, injure 3 out of the 66 Kaduna abducted worshippers. I'll be hanging out today with Gani Kayode Balogun and Mojid Jamiu, while Babajide Kolade Otitoju will join us from Abuja. Journalist Hangout starts now. We begin the program with the latest on the Abdul Rashid Maina debacle, which regards pension fraud in Nigeria. Well, this has finally reached a conclusion this Monday, as the Federal High Court in Abuja has convicted and sentenced the former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team to 61 years imprisonment. Well, the court in the judgment delivered by Justice Okon Aban convicted Mr. Maina for money laundering and stealing of 2 billion naira belonging to pensioners. And that's how we begin Journalists Hangout at the Monday edition. Welcome, gentlemen. GKB and Mr. Mojid, you're welcome to the program. We're talking about the Maina issue now. What do you make of today's judgment and sentencing?
Today is a big win for the anti-corruption fights of this present administration. Don't forget, this is the landmark case that will make or mar whatever this government is preening to be their achievements when it comes to fighting anti-corruption. For 2 reasons. For the last couple of years, we have seen twists and turns when it comes to this, including the convict now escaping out of the country, being brought back, his son also pulling some sort of Houdini and all that. And it has become so rampant that a lot of people just assume that the Maina family are above the law, that they are untouchable, as some of us will say. But this, of course, is a sign that given the right environment, the judiciary can do the job that they've sworn to do.
Well, what will it be for you? There were so many takeaways for me anyway, looking at that, talking about the involvement of banks and all that. But for you, what was the high point of today's judgment?
And I think I would say kudos to EFCC for being able to get to see this to a conclusion, especially with the fact that Maina had 3 bank accounts with fictitious names and different photographs, but with his signature. They were able to trace that. He had 500 million in one of those bank accounts, 1 billion in another account, and another 500 million in another one, totaling 2 billion. At least the EFCC was able to ascertain that, and they were able to trace his BVN to those 3, even given the fact that his names were not on those accounts. So this is a lesson for those who will steal money and use the names of their house help and or relatives to open an account, but then they will be the one signing the signature. So it's a good case. I mean, it's a good one for the anti-corruption body, the EFCC. I think kudos to them.
All right, absolutely. Let's hear from BKO joining us from our Abuja studio. Good evening, BKO. So what for you was, the biggest takeaways in that Maina judgment delivered today?
Well, I've been anxious to see a conclusion to this court case. It's a long-running one, and finally conviction has been secured. I will want to see what happens in the upper courts, because I've seen people convicted in this country for corruption, and the upper courts ruled that they didn't even have a case to answer. So I'm extremely cautious about taking a position. Remember Hassan Lawal, former Minister of Labour? In fact, he was set free. And with Justice Okon Abang being the judge, I'm a bit worried. I've seen Okon Abang convict people and superior courts set them free. I don't know what will happen in this matter, but I'm just cautious. At the end of the day, what we want to see is for corruption to be defeated in our country, no matter what way that happens. But at the same time, the EFCC must do its job diligently, and the judiciary must also do its job with even-handedness. So that's what we want to see. We'll be interested in seeing what happens in the next few days, whether there will be an appeal and how that appeal is resolved.
And let's move on to the next topic now, talking elections, and specifically the turnout of Saturday's election in Anambra State. Well, the spate of inconclusive elections in Nigeria remains a challenge in the country's quest for democratic consolidation in recent times, and this scenario reared its ugly head again in last Saturday's governorship election in Anambra. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, suspended collation and announcement of the remaining results, this until a supplementary election is conducted in the 326 polling units in Ihiala local government area of the state. Well, this will now take place on Tuesday this week. GKB, after all said and done, what do you think, or how much of support do you have for the inconclusive elections declared in Anambra?
Nobody will have support for inconclusive elections.
The basis? What about the basis? How convincing was that to you?
In the first place, let me commend all actors in the Anambra election. Some of us did not think that would come to this. In fact, some people can swear that there will be no election in Anambra on Saturday, that things are that bad. But the Anambrians, in the Anambra as they call themselves, came out to vote for their voices to be heard. And that to me is a victory in itself. Because remember on this program we've discussed the problem of the gunmen or non-gunmen in the southeast and how they will affect this election going forward. So to me, that is the first win. Second win, of course, is the fact that there has been no breakdown of law and order during this election. It's been peaceful by Nigerian standards. Of course, there were areas of conflicts, ballot buying and all that. But on the average, I think that a good account was given by the electorate in this matter. My major grouse, of course, is with the machines that were not working. Because this is a non-general election year. And we expect that this will serve as a test case for all these machines coming in. But so far, its failure on such a grand scale is frightening. Imagine something like this happening during the general election in 2023. So we have positives to take away from it, and we have negatives. About the one that is postponed, we have 24 hours that the result will come out, one way or the other. You can't go beyond tomorrow, or at most Wednesday morning.
But by and large, but by and large, a good showing. A
good showing based on the position that we were in, just a week before the election.
Because I can even relate with the journalists who traveled down to Anambra for the election and those that returned. You know, the feedback, the relief is very palpable, even for observers like us, you know, that viewed it from Lagos. It really gave people concerns, and seeing how it all turned out. What's it like for you, Majid?
Yeah, I was impressed with the conduct, and I think I congratulate the people of Anambra, and especially, I mean, no life was lost. I mean, a single life lost during an election is not worth it. No election is worth the life of any human being. I mean, that's the popular quote by former President Goodluck Jonathan, and that is what we have seen there. The leading four candidates, Soludo, Valentine, and the two Ubas, Ifeanyi and Andy. I mean, they signed a convention, a peace pact that everything will go peacefully, and I think they are living up to it. Kudos to them. for INEC, yeah, they are putting their bimodal verification accreditation system, the BVAS, into use for the first time, so we can excuse them. And with this, we have seen that nobody has complained about rigging in this election. So, which means it is limiting the extent to which you can rig. You can accuse each other of vote buying and stuff like that. But when it comes to getting, I mean, also it tells us that all those figures we see on registration is just figures. I mean, they are just figures. Now, there are 2.5 million registered voters in Anambra. In those 20 local governments, only 237,000 cast their ballot.
About 10%.
Just about 10%. Now, a particular sorry case is that of Andy Uba. And I'm saying it's a sorry case because, you see, when you cook figures for your primaries, you will reap the whirlwind on election day. Andy Uba claimed to have won the APC primary with 240,000 votes. Now, on election day, in 20 local governments now, is only having maybe like 42,000 votes.
49, yeah.
Sorry, 49,000 votes. So, I mean, so where are the 240,000 APC members? These are APC members. We have people who are not APC members. So, it shows that, and that is sending a signal towards 2023 that Nigerians are waking up, INEC is getting ready, and there's a little to how you can cut corners on election day, especially with the new, this machine, you can say it's like the iPad. It's different from what we are used to. This one is bimodal because it will capture both your fingerprint and your face.
And the visual.
And the visual. So it gives very less than 10% margin of error. And it is doing continuous addition as the votes are going on. So it is almost difficult for you to be able to rig the election. So kudos to INEC. It comes at a cost, although we have instances where, like for example, the leading candidate now, Professor Charles Soludo, couldn't vote until about 5 o'clock. They were battling the machine for about 40 minutes. So he only voted around 5:08 p.m. These are small skirmishes that are bound to happen. This is the first time they are trying this. And I think all the parties are saying that they are giving INEC kudos, but they should just, there could be technical glitches. The rate at which they manage it, especially as the GKB said, in the general election is very key. This is an off-cycle election, so they need to improve as we are moving towards Ekiti and Osun.
Well, okay, so BKO, looking at the turnout of Saturday's election, the security outlook especially, what would you attribute, the reason, for the largely secure, the very, commendable, going by assessments from many people? What would be the basis now for the secure nature of Saturday's poll in Anambra State?
First and foremost, you've got to commend the resilience of the people. If the people are not resilient, they will not show up on election day. The people were ready to cast their ballots. I said all along that in spite of the threats, in spite of the apprehension and the climate of fear, that I was sure that the election would take place. And one of the reasons I was very sure that people would come out and vote was the impact of the APGA candidate. Because the APGA candidate campaigned everywhere. Even after his campaign rally was attacked in Hihiala local government, the following day, he was back on the road campaigning. Even after gunmen attempted to take his life and 3 of his policemen were killed, his head was not bowed. he had formed what looked like a movement. So I felt that the determination on the part of his supporters, because APGA was the only party that was freely campaigning, that was openly campaigning. The other parties were too scared to campaign. Some of them went as far as Asaba to campaign.
Or even Lagos.
That's outside of the state, going as far as Delta State. Some even took their stakeholders meetings to as far as Enugu because of the security situation. But the APGA candidate, by his conduct, galvanized the supporters of the party. And everyone knows that in that state, since 2010, APGA had been consistent. So I was confident that the supporters of APGA, who showed up at Professor Soludo's campaign rallies in large numbers, will also come out on election day to vote. And that's what we have seen. The role of the leaders, stakeholders, leaders of community leaders who appeal to IPOB can also not be discounted. I said earlier that I was sure that there were still people who appeal to IPOB and IPOB will listen. People like the respected former governor of the state, Chukwuemeka Ezife, and at the end of the day, they were able to convince APGA to revoke his sit-at-home order. And APGA even went as far as appealing to people to come out and vote. So it was very significant. And we pumped sufficient security men into that state. 34,000 policemen, 20,000 civil defense, an unspecified number of soldiers, and even Air Force special forces. Definitely that will have some impact in terms of securing the area. And generally, the security men were well behaved, very professional. You hardly read of reports of people being molested, people being beaten up during this election. So that's significant, and we've got to praise the security agencies for the role that they played. I think generally the people felt secure, knowing that there were so many policemen and other security operatives poured into Anambra State. We have to admit that even in spite of that, there were places where you would not even find a single security man. That I find it difficult to explain that we had such a huge number of security men deployed to Anambra, and in some places police stations were not even secure. But generally, the people conducted themselves well, and the gunmen were also curtailed, because in the days leading to the election, they were raiding their camps, arresting some of them, putting some of them in custody as a way of preparing our people for that election, making our people more confident to come out for that election.
All right. Well, BKO, let me put you on hold there. I'll come back to the studio. So GKB, so looking at tomorrow now, how tomorrow would be in Ihiala, there is, on record, the tense security atmosphere there, that INEC is very optimistic that it will be able to surmount in that poll and the supplementary exercise of tomorrow. But, how then do we, take this further, even beyond tomorrow? Not forgetting that on Saturday too, there was also a situation in Orumba local government area. So, these pockets of tensions in these areas also gives one worry still.
Well, you have to understand that you cannot have 100% in whatever you do. I think the problem in Ihiala, as you rightly mentioned, was that of late arrival, and then people resisting that the elections should hold. It was just one local government out of 21, and now they have the time and the resources to face that particular local government and get the results out under 4 or 5 hours. I'm sure it's going to be in our folklore for years, the results that will come out of Ihiala tomorrow, because the election would not have been postponed or a supplementary election called if the figures available in that local government cannot change the tide of the results going forward. And that, to me, is the most interesting aspect But the upside is the fact that because of that aspect, every living soul in Nigeria, every journalist on this planet Earth will concentrate on Ihiala and ensure that the result is a true reflection of the wishes of the people of that local government.
What do you think, Mojeed?
Yeah, I see a bandwagon effect happening in Ihiala tomorrow. 140,000 votes at stake. Although from the trend we have seen, I don't expect more than 29,000, which is maximum, which is like 20% of the total votes cast. But then, probably with the level of security and with the enthusiasm that a candidate, that the APGA candidate is already leading, maybe his supporters might come out more. But through 326 polling units, I don't expect much to happen. I don't expect a deviation from the trend.
What you're seeing?
Or we're seeing, and I expect a peaceful conduct there in Ihiala tomorrow. And like Jide said, we should give kudos to the Professor Charles Soludo, the APGA candidate, for the way he has conducted. He defeated both the APC and the PDP candidates in their local governments.
Don't let us also forget. So the APGA is like a religion in Anambra.
In Anambra. So, so far, so good. I mean, it's almost certain that people already know what will happen.
Ceteris paribus.
Out of 20 local governments, somebody already had 18. Two others have one. Out of the four major contenders,
one doesn't even have any.
APC is 0. So,
yes, now.
But I hope maybe we'll get a consolation in Ihiala tomorrow.
Well, BKO, I would pass it on to you now. To have your last say on while we are on this subject, looking at what tomorrow will bring in Ihiala and even beyond, seeing how Saturday went peacefully, the IPOB threat, on abeyance, depending on how you look at it. But then, what are you seeing that could play out even beyond tomorrow?
Yeah, the truth is, Professor Soludo has 103,946 votes now. Ozigbo has 51,322 votes. Andy Uba has 42,942 votes. There are about 140,000 votes at stake in Ihiala. In November 2017, Ihiala local government gave Governor Obiano the highest number of votes in the election. The INEC officials who were believed to have compromised the election on Saturday have already been removed, replaced. So we'll have new electoral arbiters to conduct the election in Ihiala tomorrow. So that should reassure the people, that should give people confidence that INEC is determined to ensure that this process is transparent and credible from the beginning to the end. So all eyes are on Ihiala. There are plenty of votes to fight for there. And if the party that is currently placed second can get 2/3 of the votes, although if wishes were horses, beggars will ride, then they will probably be able to overtake the current front runner, that's the candidate of APGA. But that party has never lost an election in Ihiala. So no one knows what will happen tomorrow. We just keep our fingers crossed, but I expect security to be tight because attention will now be focused on that singular local government. So we are confident that everything will proceed as planned. Hopefully, the party APC will learn from this election Dr. Chris Ngige could not be said to have supported the candidates of his party. Many people didn't like the way the primaries went. In fact, the courts could still, in the end, declare that Andrew Bawuah was not properly nominated as candidate of the party because things were suspected to have been compromised in the course of the primary. So when that happens, you don't expect overwhelming support from members of your party.
We turn our attention now to a developing story here in Lagos, and it's still a tale of anger and frustration trailing the monumental loss of lives at the collapsed residential building in the wealthy neighborhood of Ikoyi in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. Well, the nagging question of what went wrong remains unanswered. One of the groups asking questions now is the Association of Nigerian Chartered Architects. Now, this group is advocating that 3 independent political, technical and judicial panels should be set up to unravel the root cause of the collapse. In a statement jointly signed by the President, Muyoshure Omashune, and the National Secretary of the Association, Adekoye Jola-Osho, well, they say a political probe would help government make informed decisions after getting details on approvals, supervisions, and regulations. The statement stressed the need for a technical panel to study the original brief for the project and its design, as well as documented evidence to understand the facilities included in the failed edifice. Well, GKB, talking about this political panel as a solution or as a part of a 3-way solution, how do you think this would work? It seems to be novel in all these investigative panels that we've been seeing, to unravel causes of this and that. But for this political option, what do you make of this? How viable is it?
I think what the architects are saying, which all of us have been saying for a while, is the fact that we don't want the reports brushed under the carpets under political correctness. And we don't want it buried under technical jargons that will really not tell us anything. So what they're asking for is that let's separate the areas into 3. Let's look at the technical area only for those who are in the know, so that architects, builders will know exactly the root cause of the technical aspects of the failure of the edifice, while the politicians can now find political solution for whatever is happening that led to the failure of governments in protecting the problem that arose from the area. And of course, the third one,
judicial,
is basically to ensure that those who face the law are not protected by politics. It's simply an acceptance that they do expect to get judgments from the present panel, that they expect that the panel reports will be doctored in such a way that some people will get away, or that those who are experts will not get a true reflection of what is the technical aspects of the failure, not to be convinced with the political aspects and the judicial aspects that, of course, will come out. I agree with them. Let us take one aspect and treat it separately. Then we can get a broader picture of what really went wrong.
Well, Mojeed, looking at the panel as it is, presently constituted, how convinced are you that they will be able to deliver within the 30 days that the governor has, given them, especially for such a large-scale investigation as this? Yeah,
I have absolute confidence in the composition of the members of the panel, especially as I think most of them are private sector operators, led by the president of the NIA, Nigerian Institute of Architects. So, and a lot of issues have come up since the 21-story building came down, and pertinent of which is the fact that even they are suspecting that the material testing laboratories in Lagos, results from some of those laboratories might have been compromised. Because if we are getting good results from those, that's why you are supposed to test each floor as you are building, as you are, I mean, you are supposed to test the stress level of each floor as you are advancing. And the questions that must be asked by the pro-planning is the structural engineer that pulled out of the site in February 2020. They must ask him reasons. He stated some reasons. I mean, I want to believe now is the time for him to elaborate more. He said in the letter which I read that he could only guarantee the stress level up to the 4th floor in a 21-story building. So that speaks volumes. So, and why they are particularly concerned about the 3rd level here, which is the judicial probe stroke coroner inquest, is that we won't end up like the synagogue case or the Lekki Gardens case. We have not had anything up till today. I mean, it's in comatose. So, because until people are punished for things like this, well, in this case, unfortunately, the principal actor also died in the rubble. But then he has a fantastic history of building high-rise buildings. The very first black man to build a 7-story structure in the UK. And you know, in the UK, you can't compromise standards. He also has buildings in South Africa and the US. So why is it that it is the one in Nigeria that that is failing? And they are also calling for a stress test to be conducted on the 2 existing buildings. Probably it might have been affected by the impact because the 3 buildings are like a triangle, the 15, 15, and the 21. They are. So the collapse of this structure, I mean, you think it was a controlled demolition. I mean, so the architects want these issues and more to be dealt with. That's why they are breaking down into political, technical, and actual serving punishments to those who deserve to be punished. I mean, somebody is already on suspension, maybe more will still go. But at the end of the day, going beyond just suspension, there must be punishment for whoever caused the loss of 44 lives. I mean, and still counting.
BKO, what will it be for you now, especially with this political panel that is being proposed by the Association of Nigerian Chartered Architects? What's your say on this?
I think that they are trying at their best to ensure that as a people we learn from this. We've had building collapses in the very recent past, and even suggestions made were never implemented. We had the coroner's report in respect of the Synagogue Church of All Nations building that gave way in September 2014, killing 116 people. Up to now, no one has been punished, apart from the Nigerian Institute of Builders, which announced that it was deregistering 2 of its engineers who were involved in the construction of that building. I have not seen anyone jailed. The matter has dragged on for so long in the court, and that's why the architects are saying this time that our friends in the legal profession should please allow these investigations to take place and not halt investigations through the instrumentality of injunctions, interlocutory injunctions, and the rest, as lawyers like to do. They also talked about investigating the materials used in the course of erecting that project. As I said yesterday, it is improbable that a building that high, a building as high as almost 80 meters, will simply collapse without some problems that were either not identified at the beginning or were simply ignored. You would notice that in their memo, the architects were talking about structural design and all that. You can actually, a building can give way because its structural design was defective. So you've got to get the structural design right. It's not enough to simply look for approval, seek approval to do 15 stories and all that. Part of the job of the regulatory agency is to monitor even that construction from the beginning to the end. But as we have seen, even a video has gone viral, you will see that there was a pushback at a point when these regulators were trying to do their work. And this is what is really frustrating. So how do we ensure that these things do not happen again? The architects are saying the quality of materials, that every material used must be subjected to scientific and technical analysis. They are also saying that the management of the project from the beginning has to be investigated. So if we have the technical probe, we have the political probe, and we do not have needless injunctions stopping this the investigation from happening, perhaps we will be able to arrive at some conclusions that will help us ensure that this sort of thing does not happen again. But it keeps happening in Lagos, and I'm truly worried because we don't know when next another building will give way. So in a state where this has been happening for years, by now there ought to be institutional safeguards to ensure that these buildings do not give way in Lagos as we continue to experience. No part of our country witnesses building collapse like Lagos. So it is the responsibility of the Sanwo-Olu administration to ensure that it lays down a marker and ensure that this is the last time that a building of that stature will come down in Lagos, will give way in Lagos State. And I want them to take seriously the suggestions that these architects have made, because their suggestions are very detailed, very thorough, and very professionally written, and written also in good language. You will know that they mean well. So the government needs to take those suggestions seriously so that we can get to the bottom of this matter and ensure that these avoidable deaths from building collapse do not happen again.
They've even gone on to say that the government should also consider imposing a moratorium on constructions of high-rise buildings, especially above the 6th floor. But then, of course, the clarion call from all you three gentlemen have been that government should take all these suggestions seriously. Yeah. But then, while we are looking at that, what about how do you assess the government's response in a very sorry calamity as this? There has been a lot of reactions and reports on, did the government do well? Could the government had done better in responding, and even up to now their recovery efforts? How would you assess that?
Well, you learn every day, so it would be unfair to blame the Sanwo-Olu administration totally for not expecting things of this nature. After the synagogue collapse, I think they started an agency whose job was solely to ensure that things like this do not happen again. I think they call it Lagos State Building Inspection something.
LABCA.
And their job solely is to ensure that all buildings we put up in Lagos met the minimum standard. Normally in most other countries there will be a code, a building code for areas. Even in Lagos here, when we were growing up, the areas where you cannot build more than a story building, the areas that are designated based on the soil tests for only bungalows, usually the area in the Butemeta and Obele-Odiwala that is now hosting 10-story buildings, 12-story buildings. Even there are certain areas on Lagos Island, because they are very near the sea or the ocean, that should not be more than 1-story building. They are now 5-story, 6-story buildings. So there seems to be failure of governance in that area of building code for areas. All over the world, building codes differ from area to area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Needs. I even remember in the Mr. Oshibano's interview, he said something like that about the experience in the UK. You can build beyond 2 stories in some streets. I'm telling you that in Lagos, I'm not talking about the UK, I'm talking about this Lagos that we grew up in. There are areas you cannot. There was a time somebody, I think it's in the Badobodigi, I think, somebody wanted to build a story building in an estate. They went to court that the designated code for that area are bungalows, and they won. We don't do that anymore, of course, because of loss of something. We will rest the conversation on this. We must talk about the situation in Kaduna State, where the fate of the 66 worshippers kidnapped at the Emmanuel Baptist Church in Kakao Daji in Chikun local government area of the state reminds us of one thing, that the bandits still have the capacity for mass abductions, and so insecurity in the northwestern state is still threatening. And we have reports now that 2 of the kidnapped worshippers have been killed by their captors, while 3 have been injured. The chairman of the state chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, that's Reverend Joseph Hayab, says this happened when the bandits opened fire on 5 of the victims, killing 2 and wounding 3 others who had been taken to the hospital. He expressed deep concern about the lives of the remaining 61 people who were still being held by the bandits. To justify his fear, let's share the video of how they are being treated by the bandits.
Wallahi abar zagi mu shugabannin su wallahi ba su ni na Allah ya sani ban taba zuwa wani miti ba Allah ya sani ne ga gare ni a can na kuna dan ne gaskiya ba zuwa wuri na ya saki to muna roƙon arziki ba mu da abin da mun da
dukkan su ku kaushi a nuna musu wannan mun haɗu nan haɗi kan zakka don gani ga mama
ni na wani ina roka gwamnati ne yanda na saba da Fulani gaskiya ba zan iya roka Fulani ba ni ko lokacin sallah ni kan je iyawo a wurin Fulani ni hira da su ni ma gaskiya ni ba na so abin da zai sa gwamnati ta raba ni da Fulani ina so zaman lafiya da Fulani ko na kenan addu'a na kenan Allah ya ba mu zaman salama a kasan mu gaba daya sai ke mana ne to mu yi rayuwa yanda muke
a su bari mana ne to mu yi aiki su bari mana mu yi aiki
rayuwa yanda muke
saba Mama kin haihu, amfanin haihuwa za ki.
Amfanin haihuwa mama.
Amfanin haihuwa mama. Yayi kyau. Duna ba ki haushin banza. Kai soja, don Allah soja ka bari haka nan mana. Kawai ne mutum ne haka. Kai, ku tashi. Bai shi haka ne. Ku takaita ku tashi ku ta haka ne. Ku mazan ku tashi, mazan za su fara tashi, mazan su zanna. Ku mazan ku je. Ku tahi mu gani. Ku tahi ku layi ku tahi. Bara uba. Yi hakuri ko? Ya yi kyau. Mazan duk namiji ta yi tahi. Kuma mazan kuma matan ku bi su. Bisu baya.
All right. Well, let's talk about, the situation in Kaduna State now. BKO, I start with you. What do you make of this video showing how the captors, look at the sheer number of them, but what do you make of it? I know you're versed, list of which in Hausa language.
Oh, this is yet another propaganda video by these bandits trying to let people know that these guys are in their custody, that they mean business, and they got one of the women to literally say, look, these guys are not the problem, that she's lived with Fulanis for so long, and she doesn't pray to see anything that will split her up with the Fulanis. So it's pure propaganda, what we are seeing. Usually when people see this kind of videos, they know that their people are alive. They want to quickly look for money to pay these guys so that they can be set free. And their style these days is to release people in installments. As we speak, there are still more than 50 students of the federal government college, Sabon Yauri, in captivity more than 4 months after they were picked up in their school. So we have a very big problem. Now in the Sabon Brini local government of Sokoto State, bandits have taken over, they've occupied the local government. They are now even appointing district heads. They are appointing their own members as district heads and telling people to pay taxes to these individuals. Otherwise, they could lose their lives. So now, by announcing that they've killed some of these guys, many people will now quickly want to get their people off the hook. So it suggests that we need to do more. Perhaps our strategy is not working, because we can't say that, okay, we've stopped the telecom services, yet these people are able to kidnap more and more people. They are now even asking for more ransom because of the difficulty in contacting relatives as a result of the telco services that are not available. So it's terrible. Across the Northwest, we need a very strong action to defeat these guys. The pains they are inflicting on our people is just too much.
Majid, what do you think is the way out, of the security issue in Kaduna? From many accounts, it seems to be deteriorating.
It's very sad, especially given the fact that somebody like me, in my university days, way back then at University of Ilorin, my holidays, semester breaks are always in Kaduna with some of my relatives there. So, but I pity those who live in Kaduna now. Every day we hear cases of kidnap and stuff like that. So it's rather unfortunate. We need to change our strategy. And I believe that, we have said it on this program several times, that technology is a solution to some of these things. But then we are not blaming that our military that they are not doing well, or our security operatives, but I think they need to do more. They are overwhelmed, no doubt, but the one of the major relevance why we elect a government is for protection of lives and property, and the implications of this are quite grave. People went to church on a Sunday to worship, and they were packed like a chicken, 66 of them. And now, apart from the fact that people are now afraid to go to their places of worship, those who are even farming are finding it difficult to access their farms, because where they even allow you to go to the farm, they are collecting taxes and they take a share of your farm produce. That's if you are lucky not to lose your life. So it is a very disturbing situation. We can't stop talking about it until government is able to find a solution to this carnage. And to show that they actually mean business, that they are serious, they killed 2 people. They just fired at them. As if life does not even matter to them. It's and by the time people hear things like this, the families will start rushing to look for money.
We've run out of time, but I would like you to have your final say on this, especially the solutions to technology. What options should the government be using or harnessing now?
I think the next one that everybody's been talking about, including the Senate and the House of Reps, is declare these people terrorists. It took government less than 24 hours to declare POP a terrorist organization. Now they are looking for their foot dragging or calling these bandit terrorists. I don't want to care about whether they are terrorists or not, or the meaning of the definition. If defining them as terrorists will stop this carnage, I'm all for it. Because you can't keep foot dragging on something as important as this. They are taking over local governments. They are setting up a parallel government. Things are not working the way we want. And yet we may not have all the answers. But the one that the people's representative are saying, please do, then do it. Then if it doesn't work, it's another thing entirely. But you are so fast to declare other people terrorists. But you are so slow in doing for these same people who are now spitting in your face directly that you cannot do anything. And they are right. Because we are now paying taxes, obeying new district heads, and they are putting up flags in our local governments. You know what that means? They are setting up a parallel government within the Nigerian states. That to me is the danger.
All right. Well, we can still, accommodate like a few more seconds, BKO. So in all of this, the fact that it's even Kaduna State, also, gives a very, very worrisome outlook to the whole situation there. But what will be your parting shots, BKO?
No, we've got to realize now that some elements of terrorism have been brought into the activities of bandits, and more and more of these bandits are relocating from the northeast to the northwest. So we have a big problem on our hands. Before now, bandits were not occupying territories and appointing district heads, but this is similar to what Boko Haram does, and you can see that they've been doing that in Niger State, and they've taken it now to Sokoto State. So elements from the northeast, from Boko Haram, have now relocated to the northwest, and it is the funds that they realize here that they also use to continue their terrorism in the northeast. So we have a big problem on our hands, and our security agencies must know that there is still a lot of work to do. Boasting on the pages of newspapers about their achievements is really not necessary at this time.
All right.
Our people are going through a lot, and government must realize that and do the needful.
BKO, we thank you very much for your contributions on the program. Enjoy your stay in Abuja, and of course, we wish you safe travels back. I must also, I must also appreciate GKB here and Majid Jamiu. Thank you so much for your wonderful contributions on the program today.